Welcome to the 2024 Year Ahead Horoscope for Virgo Sun and Virgo Rising. This is written specifically for Virgo Rising. However, of course, you can watch it for your sun sign or any other placement or planet that you want to. So let's go ahead and begin. Virgo Rising, you guys are actually having a really interesting year this year. But first, we're going to talk about just the major transits of 2024, just so we have a good idea of what the year is really going to look like. I already did a general overview of 2024. If you want to watch that video, I go a little bit more into detail of what these bigger transits mean and just kind of like a more of a general sense. And of course, in this video, we're going to be talking specifically how it's going to be affecting you guys. But the first thing that we have going on is Pluto ingressing into Aquarius. This starts on January 20th, and the majority of the year has Pluto in Aquarius. When we get to about September, Pluto will retrograde back into Capricorn for like 2 months. And then by November 19th, Pluto ingresses back into Aquarius, where it will stay for just about the next 2 decades. So we get Pluto permanently moving into Aquarius by the end of this year. We get the most exciting transit, in my opinion, of this year, which is the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. This is on 4/20, very easy date to remember. This is really exciting, kind of weird for you guys, so we'll go a little bit more into it. We have Jupiter ingressing into Gemini on May 25th. I love this for career and work for you guys, although it will come with some caveats. Same thing with Venus, Cazimi in Gemini on June 4th. June, like late May, early June, is all work and career stuff for you guys. There's a lot of exciting new things happening there, so I think that's something to look forward to. And then our more meta big transit of the year is going to be the Jupiter-Saturn square. This is, we get 2 of these. There's going to be 3 of them. The third one happens in 2025. But we get our first one on August 19th and our last one on Christmas Eve. This is, again, more of a long-term transit. This is going to involve some of the career stuff and relationship stuff as well. And this is kind of the caveats I was talking about when it comes to, yeah, you're going to have a lot of good work this year. Career should be good, but it comes with stipulations, and that's the Jupiter-Saturn square. Then at the end of the year, we get the Mars retrograde in Leo and Cancer. It starts on December 6th, so again, like very end of the year. But it will continue into 2025. This is arguably like the worst transit that we have this year, but it's really how we go into 2025. So anyway, before we get started, make sure you like this video if you like the content. Comment below. I want to know what your favorite month is going to be, what month you're looking forward to the most. I want to know what month you're not looking forward to as well. If you would like to support the channel, go ahead and go to my website, and you should download the transit calendar I have for iCloud. As you can see here, these little orange markers are things that I get on my calendar that let me know when a transiting planet is hitting something specifically to my birth chart. So what you'll do is if you go to the website, you'll put in your birth information, and we'll shoot you out a calendar that shows when a transiting planet is hitting something specifically in your birth chart. You don't have to open up an app. It just gets automatically downloaded to your calendar. It's $20. It supports the channel. And honestly, I love it a lot more than I was expecting to. That's why I was sharing it with everybody. I have it. I really enjoy it. And of course, if you want to know more in detail about this year and the next maybe even couple years, feel free to book a consultation with me. I like to go really, really deep with my clients in terms of where they're at right now and what the next few years are going to look like. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get talking about this year. We're starting January off with Mercury stationing direct. One of the things I really like about 2024 is on December 31st of 23, Jupiter stations direct. And then by the first of the year, Mercury stations direct. So there's all of this forward movement happening at the very beginning of the year, which I think is really exciting. Now, Mercury is stationing direct in your 4th house of home, living situation, and parents. So over the holiday around December, there might have been a miscommunication. There might have been some delay. There might have been some, general confusion about the situation there. Maybe there would have been like some problems with the home and the living situation. Mercury would have retrograded into Capricorn. Mercury would have retrograded in Capricorn, which rules your 5th house of love, romance, sex, pleasure, art, music, recreation, where there would have been some delays there. And then once Mercury went back into your 4th house, it was kind of like readjusting your living situation in order to like prioritize the creative stuff or prioritize kind of the fun stuff. But Mercury stations direct at the beginning of the year. I think that's the most exciting. So then we get to the 4th, and this is when Mars ingresses into Capricorn. And I'm going to pull up the chart for all of this in a minute, but I want to explain something. If you're not familiar already, in astrology, there's a difference between day charts and night charts. This difference shows us which planets are more on your team and which planets are more not on your team, like which planets are more harmful and which planets are more helpful. When it comes to the malefic planets, so this is Mars and Saturn, if you are born in the day, so that means when the sun is above the horizon, so if you look at your chart, look at the ascendant and the descendant, and if the sun is above that, that means you are a day chart. And if it's below that, you are a night chart. Now, Mars in a day chart is generally more negative or more frustrating to deal with, and Saturn is more on your side. Versus if you're a night chart, Saturn is more negative and hard to deal with, and Mars is more on your side. So keep that in mind when we start talking about like Saturn and Mars transits. I think that's always really helpful. But Mars ingresses into Capricorn, and there's a few things that I like about this. Number one, Mars is exalted in Capricorn. Mars does really, really well in Capricorn. So when it comes to fights, conflicts, energy, drive, ambition, Mars is really full force here, doing really, really well. And it enters your 5th house of creativity, love, romance, sex, children, art, music, hobbies, recreation. So there's a lot of energy that gets shifted into your 5th house at the beginning of the year. So this might be more energy towards being creative, having more fun, going out, partying, and things like that. The only issue is like Mars just rules really weird parts of your chart. Like Mars rules your 3rd house of like siblings, neighbors, short distance travel, communication, and Mars also rules your 8th house of like death and other people's resources and money. And so the planet that rules both of those is like exalted in your 5th house. So like you'll have to, again, all I can really do is lay out what the chart is saying, and it's up to you to apply this into your own life and make the context make sense for you. But with Mars going in there, there's a lot of energy and action going on in the 5th house. So there is a lot more focus on fun, love, romance, art, music, recreation, even sex. But it's coming from this perspective of like maybe doing some short distance travel for creativity or something to do with other people's resources related to creativity. So we get that. And then by the end of January, we get Pluto ingressing into Aquarius, where it's going to be for the majority of the time this year. So Pluto first ingressed into Aquarius in March of 2023, and it stayed there until about May or June. I keep forgetting when it left. But Pluto entered your 6th house of work, health, pets, routines, labor, and even coworkers and employees. And so Pluto is about power and fear and corruption and transformation. Now, like, look, Pluto's going to be in your 6th house for like 2 decades. I can't sit here in this video and explain to you what kind of transformation you will go through in this area of your life over the next 2 decades, right? But I would think about March through like June of last year and what kind of vibe shift happened for you in that area. Did you feel more empowered, or did you feel more scared? Did you have some health issues come up? What changed with pets? What changed with work? Did you feel more empowered with work? That's kind of the thing to pay attention to, because that energy gets reintroduced by the end of January. But that leads us into February, where all of this stuff just gets compounded. So the first transit that we get in January is Mars conjoining Pluto. This is on February 13th for those that are listening. And this is, again, still in your 6th house. Like pretty much everything in February is all in your 6th house. So work, health, pets, routines, day-to-day activities, habits, coworkers, employees. And Mars conjoining Pluto is like a revolt. Mars conjoining Pluto is a power surge. And there's a way to look at this that is like, there's a good way to look at it and there's a negative way to look at it. It's kind of, again, up to you to understand the context of it. But Mars conjoining Pluto, Mars is about fights and conflicts, inflammation, ambition, energy. And Mars in Aquarius reminds me of like an AWOL soldier. Like, you know, going against the grain. Mars in Aquarius also reminds me of like, you know, like a group or a squad fighting. And Mars conjoining Pluto is like some sort of major power surge, maybe even a little like corruption related to your work or health or routines or day-to-day activities or even problems with pets. Mars just conjoining Pluto is just like, you know, I keep using that word power because that's like it's the easiest and most simple way to understand this. Like Mars conjoining Pluto is like the, you know, dark forces, like, you know, at play at B, like manipulating or influencing a way that you act or a way that you respond. And so there might be, you know, more problems related to work and health and pets. But Mars conjoining Pluto just reminds me of like a revolt, like going against the grain. Problems with, you know, Aquarius rules things like society, groups of people, networks. And so as Mars conjoins Pluto on like more of a general mundane scale, like I would imagine there's some sort of a revolt or some sort of like, you know, almost revolutionary act. But with this being in your 6th house, it's like maybe it's time to make a gigantic revolution in terms of your, you know, your health, your work, your day-to-day activities. This whole area just gets lit up. And that continues when Venus conjoins Pluto. Now, the difference here is when Mars conjoins Pluto, like that's like anger and frustration and like really needed to take something out. But when Venus comes into play, this is like fun. Like, oh, it's fun. The way I look at it is almost like when Venus comes in to join the party, Mars conjoining Pluto and Aquarius reminds me of like an angry group of people like forming around like a certain idea that pisses them off and they're, making a tantrum about it. And then Venus comes along and then like if you're a part of that angry group of people, you start making friends with everybody and like you're like, oh, this is actually kind of fun. And so Venus coming in is like, what problems are happening here and how much energy is dictated here. There seems to be a part of it that is fun. There seems to be a part of it that is enjoyable. Now, Venus does rule your second house of money, finances, and resources, as well as your ninth house of spirituality, religion, belief, publishing, broadcasting, social media. So there's something about those two areas of your life, whether it's money or, spirituality or for artisans travel, that gets like super empowered by work. Now, the other thing is Pluto is like the dark forces at play. Like there might be situations in which like you're trying to do some work, but like you just can't because of, whatever reason that you want to, whatever reason ends up happening. But Venus conjoining Pluto is like a pleasure in that power, a fun in that power or that revolt. And it's really intense. Like I know that word intense gets thrown a lot in astrology, but like the energy is very high in this area and it's very sensitive is probably the easiest way to look at it. And that just continues onto February 22nd when Venus conjoins Mars, again, all in your sixth house of work, health, pets, routine. And again, this is like if Mars is fights and conflicts and Venus is fun and connection and indulgence, those two things together, it's like the drama is fun. The intensity is fun. The fighting and conflict is fun. Like if you're really prioritizing health right now, like, yeah, it could be a little bit more problematic, but you trying to have a solution, you trying to be combative against it is fun. Like you can suffer during a workout or you can have pleasure during the workout. And like, that's kind of how I'm reading this. And this, again, goes for like work and labor, like doing a lot of work and labor. And yes, it's intense, but it feels good to put all of that effort into it. Same thing with like coworkers. Like there's almost like coworker drama that's a little juicy. But anyway, we get to the next thing, which is the Mercury-Saturn cazimi. And this is on February 27th and 28th. This is happening in your seventh house of relationships, partners, your spouse, and any other like major individual in your life. Now, cazimis happen, like every planet goes cazimi at least once a year. Mercury, we get like 6 to 8 cazimis a year, depending on the situation. And we get a Saturn cazimi once a year. And what a cazimi is when a planet conjoins the sun or the sun conjoins a planet. And it's like that planet's birthday. Like that planet's topics get like reset for that year or for that next time period. And so I want to talk a little bit about the Saturn cazimi real quick, because Saturn is now in your seventh house of relationships. So there's been a lot more responsibility, maturity, a lot more limitations, a lot more walls and barriers related to relationships, like having to take this area of your life way more seriously or having a lot more like heavy weight in this area. And so Saturn has been in your seventh house since March of 2023. Saturn ingressed into Pisces and moved forward until about June. I always like to call this point of Saturn moving into a new sign and going direct as like you're starting a new job and you're getting on the job training. Like you have someone there showing you the ropes, showing you what to do. And then from June to November of 2023, Saturn went retrograde, where this is the first couple of weeks on your own. Like you're still learning the ropes, you're still trying to figure it out, but you're learning like, okay, what are my responsibilities? What are my duties and obligations? And how do I manage this? Like, it's one of those things where, after you get on the spot training, you still have questions. You're still not having all of the answers, but that's like that Saturn retrograde thing. And then November of 23 until up to this point, Saturn was still in shadow, but going back over that whole area where you feel more comfortable in your job now. You know what your duties and responsibilities and obligations are, and you feel a lot more like ready to go for it. It's like, after 3 or 4 months on the job, like you get the gist of it. But as we get to the Saturn cazimi, Saturn is now moving into new territory in Pisces, where now we're on that learning curve again of like, okay, now you're being faced with more responsibilities and duties and obligations, more limitations and restrictions. And this is that learning phase. This is that introductory phase. And so that Saturn cazimi really starts that. But that comes with the Mercury cazimi. Now, this Mercury cazimi is really interesting to me because Mercury is in detriment in Pisces, meaning like Mercury is all about communication, ideas, rationale. And when we have a Mercury cazimi, it's usually like a light bulb moment. Like, oh, all of a sudden this makes sense. All of a sudden I understand this. And this is a bigger deal for you guys because you are ruled by Mercury. Mercury is your ascendant ruler as well as your 10th house ruler of career. And with it going cazimi in your 7th house, this is like having a conversation with someone like a major individual or your spouse or a relationship. And even though that that conversation had to happen, like Mercury Cazimi is like, it's still not really clear. Like it still doesn't really make sense. So it's like, when you're supposed to sit down and have that talk, and then like you walk away from that talk being like, I don't really know what to think of it now. But it's also the Saturn Cazimi. Saturn rules your 5th house of love, romance, sex, pleasure, art, music, recreation, self-expression. It also rules your 6th house of coworkers, work, labor, routines, health, and habits. And those two areas of your life get reset within a relationship. So this seems to be like a really a big focus on relationships, both in a romantic sense and even like in a working sense, especially because Mercury also rules your 10th house of career. So that's what we got going on in February. And the way I've been trying to explain this year is like, January is very hustle, grind, just doing your thing. February is a continuation of that for you guys. And then by the time we get to March, things get a little weird. The first thing that we have going on is Mars squaring Uranus. Now, Mars is in your 6th house, again, of labor and health, but Uranus is in your 9th house of education and beliefs and spirituality and publishing and broadcasting, all that stuff. So since 2018, Uranus has been in your 9th house. There's been more innovation and liberation and ideas and instability related to your beliefs. But with Mars in Aquarius, where you're kind of like, really attacking everything in terms of like your work, your routine, there's some sort of like major disruption. There's some sort of major like power surge would not be the right word. This would be more of like accidentally doing something dumb and fucking everything up. Like Mars square Uranus is things don't bend, they break. Like things don't bend, they just snap. And with Mars ruling your 3rd house of technology, as well as your 8th house of other people's resources, and with that in your 6th house, this is what's so weird about Virgo risings and Mars stuff is like Mars just rules like such two weird areas of your life. That sometimes for me, like if I'm just doing a general horoscope, it's hard for me to always put the pieces together of like what that could look like. But just Mars squaring Uranus is like a really frustrating moment of like snapping, of things being a little bit out of control, things being really unstable, especially related to, again, work, labor, health, routine, pets, as well as higher education like colleges, far distance travel, spirituality. Like maybe this is kind of like not a spiritual breakthrough, but you kind of like snap mentally almost in a sense. But then we get to March 11th, and this is when Venus ingresses into Pisces. And this is in, again, your 7th house of relationships, partner, spouse, major individuals. And this is nice. Venus is exalted in Pisces. So Venus can really, have fun here and enjoy things. And what I like about this and why I made this a highlight is now that Saturn's there where you are being more responsible and more mature and having to deal with more restrictions with relationships, Venus coming in is just like, you can enjoy that. Like like you can have fun with this new responsibility or these new disciplines or, within the context of a relationship, like whether like you're single and you could be single and suffer, or you can be single and be like, you know what, like I can still have fun. I can still, I still have friends that I can meet or whatever that is. But there's some sort of fun energy that happens within relationships here that really lightens the mood of Saturn in your 7th house, which I think you guys will really appreciate. Then we get to about the end of the 3rd week of March, and this is on March 18th. Mercury enters shadow. This is where the buildup begins to April. April is honestly the most wild month of the year. There's a lot going on here. Mercury enters shadow, which means Mercury is going to retrograde. This is happening in your 8th house of other people's money, death, debt, inheritance, taxes. And as Mercury goes into your 8th house, there's a lot more mental focus on this area for you. But as Mercury enters shadow, this is like, okay, something is going to come up on the 18th that you're going to revisit back in, I think, April is when Mercury stations direct. And so there will be some delays. There will be some miscommunications. There will be a reframing of this whole area of your life for you. And again, you are ruled by Mercury. So whatever Mercury is doing is going to be a bigger deal for you than usual. And it also rules your 10th house of career. So these two topics are quite intertwined with what you guys do. We're going to come back to that because as Mercury enters shadow, we get a lot of Aries stuff happening. But that brings us to the end of March on the 25th, and this is when we have the lunar eclipse in Libra. This starts eclipse season, and this is in your 2nd house of money, possessions, finances, things like that. Now, the thing is with this, now that we're starting eclipse season, I want you to think about what was going on at the very October 13th, 14th of 2023. This is when we had a solar eclipse in Libra in your second house. So there might have been like a real low point with money, like, not feeling energized, not feeling confident about money. Maybe a big expense happened, like a new beginning. Eclipses open and close doors in a very major way. They're like new stories or stories formally ending. Like that planted a seed that this lunar eclipse will then like show what that has grown into. And so this does have to rule like maybe some sort of loss of money or some sort of like, hey, I need to look at my money because right now we have all this eighth house stuff, and the eighth house rules other people's money. Like if the first house is you and the second house is your money, the seventh house is your partner or your spouse, and the eighth house is their money. And as there's all of this focus on other people's money, that could be through debt, taxes, inheritance, debt, credit cards, shit like that. As there's a big focus here and there's about to be a big change, this now brings into focus like, oh, how much money do I have? Do I have enough money to pay off this bill or whatever that is? So then we get to April. And again, this is when shit hits the fan. This is when a lot of crazy things are going to go down. And we start on April 1st with Mercury stationing retrograde. Again, this is all in your eighth house. So things that we already talked about. Now, as Mercury's retrograding, and again, there's delays, there's miscommunication, there's a rethinking, there's a regrouping of this area, a slowdown, so to say. We get to the 8th, a week later, and we have the solar eclipse in Aries. So this is our first solar eclipse that we get in Aries. In fact, I think this is just the first eclipse that we get in Aries, period. And so with this happening in your 8th house, this is a major shift. Now, I would be aware, generally speaking, like when it comes to death in astrology, I usually like to see a compounding amount of factors. Like if you get a consultation with me, like I've told like a few people, like if I see a death, I'm going to tell you about it, or at least be like, hey, there may or may not be one. If I really think something's going to happen, I will make sure I say. But when the nodes, like when the eclipses are in your 8th house of death, like oftentimes that can be brought up. Now it's not going to, it may or may not be something that just randomly happens that you didn't expect. And maybe not you dying, like probably having to deal with other people, but death is a factor of eclipses in the 8th house. And so the solar eclipse might be like a major opening or like a door beginning or a door or a chapter ending related to death, related to other people's money, inheritance, all of that kind of good stuff. And when I say good stuff, I mean that lightheartedly, okay? Because the solar eclipse is a real big shift when it comes to other people's money and inheritance and all that kind of stuff. Now, why this eclipse is such a big deal, in my opinion, is because 2 days later, we get Mars conjoining Saturn on April 10th. Mars-Saturn conjunctions are always big deals. It's both of the malefic planets conjoining together. Probably the best example of a Mars conjoining Saturn was when the lockdowns happened. Like literally the day the lockdowns happened was when Saturn ingressed into Aquarius and Mars ingressed into Aquarius, and they conjoined each other. Saturn is governments and authorities, and Mars is separation and cutting, and it was in Aquarius, the sign of society. It was like the government says to separate yourself, lock yourself down, stay away from people. And that was in your 6th house of work, labor, health, routines, day-to-day activities. So you can kind of take the energy of like March, end of March, early April of 2020, but apply that to your 7th house of relationships and partners and, your spouse. There seems to be some heavy energy regarding relationships. And again, I want you guys, if you watch this throughout the year, comment below and let me know what ends up happening for you. So because I want to know what's going to end up happening. Mars does rule your 3rd house of siblings, neighbors, short distance travel, and your 8th house of death and other people's resources and money. And it's conjoining Saturn in your 7th, where there's like, both a really heavy restriction and a really heavy separation regarding a relationship. For example, maybe if you're married, like your partner gets in debt or there's some sort of an accident or something along those lines. This is like both really crazy. And I don't want to say bad because April's like, it's hard to sit here and say it's bad because the next transit that happens, but this is very serious energy, especially related to relationships and their stuff. So keep in mind with that. But then this is what's so weird about April. We get to 420 and we have this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. This is arguably the best transit of this year. And so it's so weird how we have like these really hardcore transits and then it's like super amazing transit. Now, I will say 80% of the time, Jupiter transits are good. But 20% of the time, Jupiter transits can often facilitate something that may not necessarily be on the surface positive, but maybe later down the road you see it as positive. Because Jupiter rules faith, Jupiter rules belief. And when Jupiter moves into a new sign or something happens with Jupiter, something might trigger that area for you to like be more faithful or like more curious about like, hey, what are your beliefs about this area? And that thing might be quote unquote negative. But 80% of the time, Jupiter is good. And again, this is happening in your ninth house of spirituality, religion, education, far distance travel. Jupiter conjoining Uranus is like striking gold or striking oil. There's some sort of, if Jupiter's like abundance and giving and joy, and it's on Uranus of innovation, liberation, freedom, there's some sort of ecstatic, electrifying excitement when it comes to, again, like abundance or expansion. Jupiter expands whatever it touches. And here's the thing. This is Jupiter rules your seventh house of relationships. It also rules your fourth house of home and family. But what's interesting is that you have all of this heavy stuff going on with relationships, but then the planet that rules relationships for you conjoins Uranus, where it's like big, shocking thing that changes everything. And it's related to beliefs, publishing, broadcasting, spirituality, religion, all that stuff. So this could be a major like spiritual breakthrough for you guys. This can be all of a sudden you're in a relationship. This could be a lot of different things, but it's just more of like, again, and if you're married, this has much more to do with your partner. Like something big will happen with your partner. This can also revolve your parents and your living situation. There's some sort of exciting opportunity that involves some sort of a breakthrough here. And then we get to the end of April on April 30th, and this is when Mars ingresses into Aries. So like for the majority of people, this is good. There's a lot that I like about Mars and Aries this time around. It's just hard to say for you guys because it's in your eighth house. So again, other people's money, debt, death, stuff like that. And the reason being is as Mars goes into Aries, let's move over here at the very end of the month. Mars is now in its domicile. It's doing really, really well. But again, fights, conflicts, inflammation, energy, ambition, and it's in your eighth house of other people's stuff. So it's like that whole area gets even more charged up, even more energized, even more problematic or inflammatory, especially related to siblings and neighbors and things like that. Now, the last time Mars was in Aries was around May and June of 2022. Now, that was a little bit different because Jupiter was there. But think about what was going on in May and June of 2022 related to other people's money. Did you get like some sort of an inheritance, or were you going more into debt, or did you get a bigger credit card increase, a bigger credit card limit? That would be kind of things to think about, especially anything related to siblings or neighbors or short distance travel, because that's going to be the similar vibe. Now, as we go into May, before I talk about these transits I have listed, I kind of want to just show a general theme of May, going back to the chart. So this is May 1st, and I want you to look at this ninth house stuff. We're going to have Venus, the Sun, Uranus, and Jupiter all in your ninth house of spirituality, religion, far distance travel, higher education, publishing, broadcasting. There's so much good energy happening here. It's like Venus and Jupiter are both the benefics. The Sun is arguably a benefic, and Uranus can be a malefic planet, but I feel like with Venus and Jupiter, it's going to be good. There's just a lot of good energy happening in this ninth house at this point. And this is why this part of the year is so weird, where it's like all of this chaotic stuff happens, and then it's like, Garden of Eden level of stuff. So I think spiritually, social media wise, learning wise, there's a lot of strength, there's a lot of stability, there's a lot of excitement, there's a lot of new opportunity happening here as we get into May. But the first thing that we have on May 13th is Mercury leaves shadow. So again, that whole time, Mercury is retrograde and in shadow in your eighth house of other people's money and resources and death and stuff like that. And then Mercury doesn't actually leave that whole part until May 13th. So this is like March 18th to May 13th. All of the mental focus related to you and your career is focused on other people's stuff. And then Mars conjoins the North Node on May 19th, which this is really just cranking shit up to 11. Like we're really going after it. Things are really heating up related to the eighth house of other people's money, death, and debt. Like, for example, this would be like, and this might be an example or an analogy, depending on the context here. But like a way I would look at this is like, you apply for a loan for $10,000 and the bank gives you $60,000. You're like, oh my God, should I use all of that money? Like just things get really extreme here. Also, Mars burns things and it's in the 8th house of other people's resources. So like you are burning through other people's resources. Or like if you are married, your partner is burning through their money like no tomorrow. It is your 3rd house ruler of, again, short distance travel, siblings, neighbors, communication, how you utilize the knowledge that you have. And so there's a part of this is like, it's very like uncomfortable in one sense. But again, I would just think about May and June of 2022, and that will give you the best idea of what this is going to look like. But then we get to the end of May on the 25th, and this is when Jupiter ingresses into Gemini. And it's going to enter your 10th house of career, reputation, legacy. So after we get all of this cool stuff happening in your 9th house, there seems to be some major career shift happening for you guys by the time we get to the 25th. So Jupiter, again, rules your 4th house of home and family and living situation, and it also rules your 7th house of relationships. Now, the interesting thing is 4th house ruler of home and family in your 10th, there's a work and living situation context. But Jupiter is in detriment in Gemini. Jupiter is trying to do 2 things at once in Gemini. And I would argue from like here, from like end of May to like August, it's like trying to make the best of both worlds, trying to have your cake and eat it too. And you'll get a little bit of that. But throughout the year, there's going to have to be some consolidation. There's going to have to be some, compromises that are being made. Your 4th ruler is in detriment in the 10th house. So it's kind of like work problems or living situation is dictated on work and career, and it may not be the best scenario ever. Same thing, Jupiter rules your 7th house of relationships. Now, what's really interesting is when you see the 7th house ruler in the 10th, this can be an indication of marriage or being more open in public with a relationship. That's going to be, probably the deal for a couple of you. But your 7th house ruler is in detriment in the 10th, where maybe even a relationship context gets complicated because of work. It's also your 7th ruler of relationships squaring your 6th ruler of coworkers or employees. So there's a little bit of a conflict of interest there going on, which I think is very fun. But Jupiter goes in your 10th. Jupiter expands. Jupiter brings opportunities related to career and work. Really like that for you guys. And that brings us to June, which we have our next big transit, which is going to be on the 4th, and that's the Venus Cazimi in Gemini. So something I should have said a minute ago was the last time Jupiter was in Gemini was about June of 2012. Think about summer of 2012 and what was going on with career and reputation and legacy, and what were the opportunities that you got, or did it expand in any way? Because that was the last time Jupiter was in Gemini. Now let's talk about the Venus Cazimi in Gemini. Venus Cazimis are also, again, restarts, refreshing. Venus rules your 2nd house of money, and it also rules your 9th house, again, of spirituality, traveling, higher education, things like that. Now, Venus goes retrograde in the same zodiac sign every 8 years, but she also has her exterior conjunction with the sun, her Cazimi with the sun, also every 8 years in the same sign. So the last time we had a Venus Cazimi in Gemini was June of 2016. What was going on in June of 2016 related to work and career? And did anything shift for you? Was there any sort of new, exciting, fun beginning? Now, again, this is all related to 2nd house stuff of money, 9th house stuff of spirituality, religion, far distance travel, publishing, broadcasting. And look, also when we get to this June 4th, it's like Mercury, which is your ascendant ruler and 10th ruler, is in its domicile in Gemini, and it's conjoining Jupiter, where it's just like all of this new fun beginning stuff with work and career that I think is really, really exciting. I really, really like May and June for you guys specifically, even though April is going to be a little complicated. Then we get to June 8th, and this is when Mars ingresses into Taurus. Real big slowdown here. Mars is fights and conflicts, and if it's in your 9th house of spirituality, religion, education, far distance travel, there's a lack of motivation here. I always like to look at Mars in the 9th house as like shaking your fist at God, being a little bit frustrated. You can think about like July and August of 2022 and what was going on for you spiritually then. Same thing with, school or, travel. Was there a lot of slowdown? Was there a lot of muck? Because that was the last time Mars was in Taurus. So think about that time and think about how frustrating it was, especially related to travel, since Mars does rule your 3rd house of short distance travel. But then we get the Mercury Cazimi on June 14th. Again, all 10th house stuff of career, reputation, legacy. So it's like, I think this is like the pinnacle of all of these major career shifts that you guys have, because it's like Jupiter enters your 10th house. All of a sudden there's some expansion and opportunity. Then Venus goes cazimi. So there's this new money start or something to do with money related to work. And then Mercury, which actually rules your 10th house of career and your ascendant ruler, goes cazimi as well, where it's like, now we're really in a new start. And so I just think all of June is like work and career stuff, new things, new money, more opportunities. We like that. So that's really exciting. Then we get to June 30th, and this is when Saturn goes retrograde, again in your 7th house. So now that Saturn's been direct for a little while, and you've been seeing where else you need to be more mature and have more discipline and responsibilities, but also where your limits are, where your boundaries are within relationships, like you've kind of been introduced into what those are going to be. Saturn going retrograde is, the analogy I've been using is like Saturn being direct is the classroom work versus Saturn retrograde is the field work. It's like, okay, now that you've learned these concepts, now you have to apply them. Now you have to do the work with it. And so there seems to be a slowdown in relationships, or like having to enforce a boundary or having to enforce more of that maturity and responsibility. All of the stuff that you saw coming, it's time to actually apply. So then we get to July. One second, I need a water break. So that's the major part of 2024. July, August, September, and even October are not nearly as action-packed. They're a lot more slower. And then November and December, we see a lot more action. So July, we have Mars conjoining Uranus. Again, this is still in your 9th house of spirituality, religion, education, far distance travel. We had a Mars-Uranus conjunction in 2022. What was going on August of 2022? Was there some sort of explosive moment or some sort of frustrating, really just pent up anger or frustration, especially related to beliefs or travel or siblings or neighbors or even like other people's resources, where it was just like ripping your hair out, feeling frustrated, going slow? Like Mars and Taurus conjoining Uranus and Gemini reminds me of like, if you've been sitting on the couch for a month and haven't gotten up at all, and then after that month you get up on your legs, like you will break your legs. Like that's what Mars conjoining Uranus like seems like to me. It's kind of like things have been slow, things have been not as fast, and then all of a sudden Mars conjoins Uranus where you need to get up, and then it's like something shatters, something breaks. So there's another unstable moment here. This one's arguably a lot more frustrating because it's like, for example, or another example is like if your car is stuck in the mud and you just keep slamming that gas and it's spinning the tires, this is like slamming it really hard and then your engine explodes or like your transmission dies or something like that. That's kind of the vibe here. But then the next day, we get Mercury ingressing into shadow on July 16th. Now, Mercury is actually going to station retrograde in your 1st house of yourself, your body, your identity. And so there will be like, you might miscommunicate something. You might re-see how you do things. But Mercury will retrograde back into Leo, into your 12th house of isolation, the subconscious, hidden enemies, self-sabotage, repressed, unacknowledged parts of yourself. So on July 16th, as Mercury enters shadow, and again, Mercury is your ascendant ruler. So it's like your ascendant ruler is in the 12th. Maybe you're a little bit stuck in your head. Maybe you're a little bit like, being really hard on yourself. And I always think, when Leo rules the 12th house, it's like any sort of like courage or pride or, confidence. It's like a part of your chart that's hard to access, that's like under lockdown. And so like your ascendant ruler in the 12th, like you just might be beating yourself up. But what's going to be important here is Mercury will retrograde over this whole area where you're going to be kind of like really looking at yourself and your negative beliefs and your subconscious and being like, what the fuck is going on here? Like there's a delay, there's a rethink. You might say something or do something that makes you rethink, like, why do you get in your own way? Why are you self-sabotaging? That's kind of the theme for this Mercury retrograde. Then we get Mars going into Gemini, and it's not that the gravy train ends. And again, this is on July 20th, but like all of that excitement in May and June was great, but this is where problems start to come in. It's again still in your 10th house of career and reputational legacy. And you can think about what was going on between October of 2022 and March of 2022, because we had a whole ass Mars retrograde in Gemini. Now that Mars retrograde in Gemini was bad. Like this will not be nearly as bad. In fact, it won't be that bad. It won't be that long and tumultuous, but that same energy of Mars and Gemini is like trying to do two things, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and I'm, juggling everything. Like that frustration energy is going to be there. Mars is fights and conflicts and energy and ambition. And so there will be a lot more action-packed energy related to career, but also more fights and conflicts and frustration, especially related to like your schedule, technology, short distance travel, and revolving other people's resources. So that brings us to August. Now, again, August isn't the biggest thing, but there is kind of like a bigger deal with that whole. Well, we're going to get into it. Okay. Mercury stations retrograde on August 5th. Like I said, it's retrograding your first house of you, your body, yourself, your image, your identity. So there's some sort of a miscommunication or a delay or a rethinking the way that you see yourself. And as Mercury goes back into your 12th house, it's like, where do you get in your own way? Why don't you have enough courage? Why don't you have enough like confidence? And how do you need to muster that strength? That's what this is all about. But then we get to the 14th, and this is when Mars conjoins Jupiter. And Mars-Jupiter conjunctions are like blow-ups. Like something is going to blow up, something is going to expand, something is going to get a little wild. And the way I look at this is like, because like the whole thing with this Jupiter and Gemini stuff is just trying to do two things at once, and it's just going to be hard. And this is kind of like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Your 8th ruler is conjoining your 7th ruler, so there is some sort of like, fight or conflict with the relationship regarding shared resources. It's also your 3rd ruler and your 4th ruler, so your siblings or your aunts, uncles, and cousins are fighting with your parents, or things like that. And it's just kind of like, exploding in two different ways. Like you can only juggle so many things until something falls off. And if you're on a big unicycle trying to juggle and something falls off, you're going to lose your balance and fall down. That's how I look at this. But what's so interesting about this Mars-Jupiter conjunction is this tees us up for the Jupiter-Saturn square. And this is, again, that big meta transit for the year. It's Jupiter squaring Jupiter in your 10th house of career, reputation, legacy, squaring your 7th house, Saturn in your 7th house of relationships, partners, spouse, and individuals. Here's the thing. Jupiter being in Gemini is like trying to have 2 jobs, trying to do 2 things, but it's your 7th house ruler. So it's like trying to balance work and relationships, trying to balance the living situation and family with work. And as Jupiter squares Saturn and Saturn's retrograde, right? Like we were just talking about how like now you're doing the field work of like, this is what you've got to be responsible over. This is where you need to be more mature and more disciplined. Is there like a gigantic hair coming off of me? Okay, sorry. I saw it reflecting in the light. Saturn being retrograde is like, you're actually doing the field work of where you need to be more disciplined, more mature. And Jupiter is like trying to seize these opportunities. And this is kind of the moment where you go like, oh, I can't do both of these things. Both of these things aren't going to work. It's not that you have to pick one or the other, like right here, right now, because we get a second one of these in December. But this is kind of giving you the awareness of like, oh, something's not right here. Something is out of balance. And I can't do both of these things while also having to be more responsible and mature of where I'm at. And this is just having like the cognitive awareness of like, oh, I'm in a little bit of a predicament and I need to figure out how to balance both of these concepts. And that's going to take you some time. That's going to take you pretty much until like December to get really down. So we get to September. September's slow. It's boring for the most part. Comparative to the rest of the year. That doesn't mean that we don't have, big transits, but Pluto goes back into Capricorn. Home sweet home. It's been a while. Kind of a revisit to everything since 2008. Pluto going back into your 5th house. So fear, power, corruption related to creativity, love, romance, sex, children, hobbies. You know the deal. It's been there for like 16 years. Nothing new. Venus conjoins the South Node, though, on September 3rd. And this is in your 2nd house of money and possessions. So like Venus is in her domicile in Libra. She really likes to be in Libra. But by the time we get to this September time, it's like, okay, money is good. Or the other way to look at this is you have nice possessions, but you don't like them anymore. Like Venus conjoining the South Node is like, these are nice things. They're really enjoyable, but they're not for me at this moment. Like, I don't want this anymore. And this might even have to do with 9th house stuff. So education, far distance travel, spirituality, but it's really like 2nd house stuff of money and possessions. Like, what stuff do you have? It's like, you might have this nice stuff, but you might, turn into a minimalist. You're like, I don't like this stuff anymore. I want to get rid of it. This also might be like a expense that you have to make. But like, for example, if you're like me and you're like Duck McScrooge, or Scrooge McDuck, whatever his fucking name is, being like, oh, I don't want to spend money on this. I don't want to spend money on that. And like, there's almost like a fear around like spending money on things that like you might deserve. that could be an issue right here. But this is like a weird transition with money. We have a Venus South Node conjunction in November of 2023. So try to think about that time and money and like moving on with like pleasure or what you enjoy in terms of like possessions, because that will come up again. Then Mars enters Cancer on the 4th, the next day. And it's going to spend a lot of time here. It's in your 11th house of friends, networks, and communities. So as Mars moves into Cancer, Mars is fights and conflicts. Mars does not like to be in Cancer. Mars is about fights and conflicts, and Cancer is about like babies and nurturing and protecting. And Mars in Cancer is very defensive. Mars in Cancer is very like, insecure almost in a way. And there will be some more fights and conflicts and drama with friends. I would think about what was going on for you in about April of 2023, because that was the last time we had Mars in Cancer in your 11th house. And was there crabbiness or frustration with friends and, like low energy with friends? That's what this vibe is here. And we got quite a while of Mars in Cancer, so we're just going to keep moving forward. We get to October, and we start eclipse season again on the 2nd of October, second house, money and possessions. Again, very similar to October of 2023, where it is like, all right, we have a slowdown with, there's a new start with money. There is a, here we go. I wanted to get to here. This is like a door opening or a door closing with money, a major expense that has to happen that you don't really feel comfortable doing. It is a restart. It is a low point. It is a major chapter beginning or a major chapter ending regarding money and finances. Okay. Which is interesting because so much of this year is about money and work for you guys. So then we get to the 4th, and this is when Mars enters shadow. So Mars is going to retrograde in Leo and Cancer, and it's going to enter shadow in your 11th house of friends, networks, and community. So I'd really pay attention to this 4th date, because this is like, okay, some sort of drama or action is going to happen with your friends or with your community that is going to become important later on. Like maybe this is when you're kind of like, I don't like my friends. I'm having low energy with my friends, with my people. They're, maybe you're just like upset about something someone did, or you don't want to spend time. That's the way I would just kind of keep your ears open for that sort of energy here. And then on the 9th is when Jupiter stations retrograde. So this is very similar to the Saturn retrograde, where it's like Jupiter being direct is like, it's easy to have faith when everything's going your way. But when Jupiter goes retrograde, it's like, okay, well, when that gravy train stops, are you still going to have faith? Are you still going to be optimistic? Are you still going to have gratitude for the situation that you're in? And another way I look at it is it's very similar to the Saturn retrograde, and like Jupiter being direct is like the classroom work, and then Jupiter going retrograde is that field work. Like this is when you actually have to put in that effort. It's not just easily handed to you. And so Jupiter going retrograde is we're slowing down and we're reflecting, like, what are my beliefs about career? Is this opportunity right for me? Do I like where I'm at right now? Getting readjusted with where you're at right now. This is also, again, because it does rule your 7th house of relationships. This is moving backwards with relationships and home and family and living situation. They're having delays and some of those problems becoming more apparent. And then we get to the 17th, and here's the deal. This actually isn't an eclipse. I fucked this up, and I thought this was an eclipse. It really isn't, but I'm going to count it anyway because of how much stuff happened in Aries this year. I can't imagine this is not relevant. And so we get this lunar eclipse in Aries, where now we're coming back to this whole idea of other people's money, shared resources, death, and inheritance. I'm not really going to talk about the eclipse that is going to be possibly happening in Virgo and Libra, simply because once we get to 2025, when the nodes shift, there's so much more happening there. But this is kind of coming back, and also why I think this is important is your 11th ruler is being eclipsed in the 8th, and your 8th ruler is squaring it in the 11th. So there's something to do with like friends, community, and networks related to shared resources and other people's money. And so this seems like a having to address a situation, or a situation is revealed to you that you were not aware of. Then we get to November, and Mars goes into Leo. Think about May and like June of 2023, and what was going on for you there, because that was the last time Mars ingressed into Leo. And the thing is with this, I typically would like Mars in Leo, but it's in your 12th house of isolation, the subconscious, hidden enemies, self-sabotage, repressed, unacknowledged parts of yourself. And so the issue with this is Like Mars in Leo is about being confident. It's about like, you know, saying shit with your chest, like letting it roar. But as Mars goes into Leo, it's like going into your 12th house where it's like, are you reacting in a situation that you don't need to react to? Are you like, you know, too sensitive? And it's kind of like, you know, like your pride is being hurt almost a little bit. You know, I kind of look at it with that. This might have to deal with siblings again, neighbors, short distance travel, and 8th house ruler of like death and stuff like that. So when it's like your 8th ruler in the 12th, a lot of like secret private stuff is happening that's a little bit more problematic. And we're going to talk more about that in just a second, okay? So Mercury enters shadow on November 7th. So again, we're going to have another Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. This is in your home, the area of your home, living situation, and parents. And what's interesting about this whole Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius is this is like Mercury is in Jupiter's sign and Jupiter's in Mercury's sign, and they're both in detriment and opposite each other, where this is like a real crisscross face-off with like, I have problems with my home because of my career, but I have problems with my career because of my home. And there needs to be like a readjusting situation here where you know, maybe you can't just like work from home on your couch. Maybe you need like a desk, or, you know, maybe you've been neglecting, you know, responsibilities and things you need to do at home because you've been traveling for work. That's kind of like and same thing with like home and family, like just trying to balance work and family life here. And both of them are kind of fucked up at this time. And when I say fucked up, I mean just like, just not doing the best. It's not like it's horrible, but it is more of like, all right, we need to reschedule and redo things here. So I think this Mercury retrograde is really funny, in my opinion. Then Pluto goes into Aquarius, November 19th. As you can see, these two dates are flipped over, but November 19th, Pluto moves into Aquarius, back in your 6th house of work, health, pets, routines. From November of 2024 to July of 2025, every major planet ingresses into a new sign. Pluto moves into Aquarius, Neptune moves into Aries, Uranus moves into Gemini, Saturn moves into Aries, and Jupiter moves into Cancer. It's very simple to read that like there are a lot of new chapters beginning in 2025. And like I've said before, 2024 is the buildup to 2025. That's all this year is a buildup to 2025 and what major changes are going to be happening there. So keep that in mind. Then Saturn stations direct on November 15th. This is in your 7th house, again, of relationships, partners, spouses, individuals. This is where it's like, okay, you've done the field work, and now you feel a little bit more comfortable with where you need to be more mature and responsible, where you need to have better boundaries within relationships. And this is feeling better about taking on that role, taking on those responsibilities, and like doing what you must do. It's like, all right, you did the field work, you've learned, now you're more comfortable in it. And then Mercury stations retrograde by November 25th. And again, this is the delays with home, family, living situation, parents. This is the reconfiguring. This is the rethinking, replanning, reviewing, slow down, miscommunication with parents or living situation, and just trying to adjust this whole living situation, work situation that you're in. But then we get to December, and this is when Mars stations retrograde on December 6th. And this is the thing, like, Mars retrograding in your 12th house. I mean, like Mars retrograding in Leo anyway, like the easiest way I've been able to put it is like, it's kind of like having your tail tucked between your legs. It is losing confidence. It's the cowardly lion. And this one's a hard read for you guys because it's Mars and Leo in your 12th. And again, Mars just rules weird parts of your chart. It rules your 8th house of other people's money, shared resources, debt, death, and inheritance. And that is in your 12th house of hidden enemies. So it's like maybe there's some sort of a loss when it comes to shared resources for reasons unknown to you. It's also your 3rd ruler of siblings, neighbors, short distance travel, retrograding in the 12th house. So it's like, I don't know, maybe your neighbors are up to no good, or, you know, you and your siblings have like somewhat of a falling out or something like that. I don't really know. But Mars going retrograde is in Leo is like, again, very cowardly lion, losing confidence, not being courageous. It's all bark, no bite. And like, you know, when you need to bite, like you don't. And so there's just going to be a lack of confidence here. And the thing is, that's okay. Like the end of 24 into the beginning of 25 is going to suck. But then it's like, once we get to like March of 2025, it is one thing after another that changes. And it's like, whatever bad is happening here will eventually be good through 2025 and 2026. You just have to be patient. But it's like the bad stuff will create a situation in which good stuff does get created. It's like bad men create, or good men create bad times, or easy times create bad men create, bad times create good men. That's kind of the deal here. Mercury stations direct on the 16th. We're getting this whole family living situation thing figured out. And then on Christmas Eve, we get Jupiter squaring Saturn. Again, 10th house and 7th house. And this is where, now that Jupiter is retrograde and Saturn is direct, because the last time it was the other way around. Saturn was retrograde and Jupiter was direct, where when Saturn was retrograde and Jupiter was direct, was kind of like, I'm trying to take advantage of these opportunities and do this, but like, I don't know where I stand. I don't know what I need to be responsible over. This is different. This is like, I know what I have to be responsible over. I know what my obligations and duties are. And because of that, like, I might have to pick one or the other with these opportunities. I might have to like lower my intake with work and career. And a lot of this is relationship related too. Like, you know, in August, you guys might be like, you know, this relationship's great, but like there's something going on here and I'm not really sure what to do with. And by December, it's like, hey, I know where I need to be more mature and more serious and disciplined. And, you know, I need to reevaluate some things in this relationship and, you know, maybe tone it down a little bit. But that's this year for you guys. That's 2024. So like I said, comment below. Let me know what month you're looking forward to. Let me know what month you're not looking forward to. Make sure you like this video. It does support the channel. Subscribe if you want to keep up to date with everything that is going on this year. Like I said, if you want to get the transit calendar for your phone or for Google Calendar, and you want to keep up to date with when a transit is hitting your one of your placements in your birth chart, go over to my website. It's $20. It supports the channel as well. Feel free to book a consultation with me if you want to go as literally as deep as it possibly gets in astrology related to 2024 and 2025 and beyond. So with that being said, I love and appreciate you guys, and I'll be seeing you next time.